When the city of Arlington, Texas was looking how to invest for sports, they went to New York University and the answer came back, esports. Hi, I'm Jonathan Yates with the Culture of Sports, and we're filming today the first segment of our new series, May the Esports Be With You, at Illinois College with Mike Snyder, the athletic director, where the results have been nothing but positive. Mr. Snyder, thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So how did you come about esports down here in Illinois College?
Well, it started about 2 years ago. We had a campus committee that was looking at ways to expand our reach and grow enrollment, and we started talking about co-curricular opportunities. And I had seen some things recently about the growth of esports, the popularity of the game of League of Legends, and so I brought that to the committee as an opportunity of maybe we could start something here to grow enrollment and to really boost some investment on campus. And we looked into it as far as the feasibility. We looked at the growth potential and ultimately put a proposal together and moved forward with it and started our program last fall.
So here we are filming at the Cisco Meraki Gaming Center here. Is this the only time it's ever empty?
Pretty much, yes. Yes. So this space is obviously our main competition space for our team. It's our main practice space for our team, but it's also opened up for student use outside of that as well. So, you'll notice we've got some large screen TVs. We've got a PlayStation, Xbox, those sort of things
Very
in here
impressive,
too.
yes.
Thank you. And so, yeah, that's when we're not using it for your practice or competition, students are in here playing and socializing, and it's a good gathering place for the campus.
I mean, you're right here in the heart of Big Ten and Big 12 countries, so how was it received at the school and the local community that you'd be embracing esports?
So it was seen as an interesting step. We were one of the first schools in the area to make this move into the world of esports. It really stemmed initially from a school up in the Chicago area, and then I had some conversations with them, and we jumped into it, and I think people understand the reasons why we're doing this. They understand that it's a really interesting opportunity to get our name out there, not just in Illinois, but nationally. The tournament that we're going to be competing in here this fall, starting actually tonight, in our division, we'll have University of Maryland, we'll have Michigan, we'll have Penn State, Harrisburg. So there's some other schools out there, specifically some of those Big Ten schools that will be able to get the Illinois College name out across the country.
Did it surprise you that they followed you into esports?
Not necessarily. I think that once people started to do their research and understood that this is really the beginnings of something I think is going to really grow. I think everyone is starting to really turn their attention to this phenomena that is esports. And there are so many different titles and so many opportunities to have students engage and play a sport that they love, that I think it just makes sense for schools to start investing in it.
Now, Arlington, Texas, they've had nothing but very positive results. I mean, they're pointing 15% growth each year. Are you seeing the same thing down here?
As far as our size of our teams, or
the revenue is just sort of the overall reception?
Sure. Well, I can tell you that we just completed our first recruiting class, and we brought in 8 new students this fall, which virtually doubles our team from last year. And so we're seeing that the ability to recruit to the title and recruit to the team is getting a little more streamlined each year. And so I think that'll continue to happen year after year, just because recruiting for traditional sports, baseball, football, soccer, those sort of things, there are certain platforms that are out there, and where to go to get names, and those things are just now being developed. So I think that the ability to recruit and the roster growth will continue to grow over the next few years.
What is the recruiting process like for an esports superstar?
Sure. So it's very...
Without giving away any tricks.
Oh, absolutely. So it's very similar to just about any other traditional sport. The difference is how we identify them. So if you're a football athlete, you're Jonathan and you're playing at a high school up near Chicago, and we know a coach up there, and we're gonna see you play, and we're gonna get to know you and your family and whatnot. Well, if there's a person who's interested in competing in League of Legends or another esports title, they're competing online. And so, but their names aren't necessarily sitting there for you. So it might be, Super Player 9, and you don't know if Super Player 9 is a 12-year-old, is a 65-year-old, or is a college-age student. You just don't know. So it's a little different on identifying who these athletes are. But so the League of Legends platform has started a Recruit Me section. So as the athletes are starting to play, they can register and say that I'm looking to play collegiately. And that helps out a lot. And so then we can identify those folks through that avenue.
And so are these super Robert Nines, are they starting to realize that they can get a college scholarship or substantial assistance for playing esports at the college level?
Yeah, it's starting to be more and more common knowledge. Now, as I said, we're still in the infancy stage of esports and college athletics. But yeah, there's absolutely becoming more of an awareness that the sport that they love to play is now available on a college campus, and they can be just like all the traditional sports and get an opportunity to compete at a higher level.
Now, do you coach an esport player?
Absolutely.
And how does that take place?
Yeah, so once again, same parallels. There's the same thing that you'd see with a traditional sport. So we have our coach who we hired last year. He's a full-time 12-month esports coach.
What was his background?
Coaching.
Really?
Yeah.
Esports.
So he got his degree, his bachelor's at U of I at Illinois, and he started playing in League of Legends during that time. And the way that the rankings work, so there's different levels of rankings within the game. And to not bore you too much or get into too much of the weeds of the details, but he was at one point one of the 10th highest ranked player in North America. And he was coaching online on a website. And the day that we were looking to advertise for our full-time coach, I sent a job posting to that website administrator, and it just so happened that our coach happened to be on that day. He was living in Chicago area, saw this, applied, but and lo and behold, here he is. But he's got a strong background in playing and competing and doing some online coaching. So it's growing, but he's got a background in esports.
So when you talk to other athletic directors, I mean, at the conferences you've been president and on the boards of some very impressive organizations.
Thank you.
Are more and more starting to ask you about esports?
I've had 2 conversations, one today and one last Thursday, with 2 different schools and some colleagues that I have. I got an email from a good friend of mine who's an athletics director out at a school on the East Coast asking as well. I think I've had close to half a dozen colleagues reach out and say, "Tell me about this esports thing." I think initially it was the thought was, is this a passing craze? Is this something that's just a fad and is just going to move on?
The numbers don't tell that story. That is
not.
For sure. Because when you look at the finances for college sports, football's still about 70% of the revenue, but football attendance is falling. Basketball attendance is falling. Of the FBS schools, over 80% lose money. Most of the profits are made just by 2 schools, Texas and Texas A&M, and oil's at a 4-year high. So, when oil's at a 4-year low, they're not going to look that good. I mean, are you pointing them out, hey, we've got 15% growth esports across the board. We're attracting a lot of foreign students who everybody needs and should be, fans for everything. And, the players are coming in, they don't get injured as much, they don't eat as much, and, that just esports is the future.
Yeah, we look at that. We look at where we can pull students from. We're conscious of the high school demographics and where they're growing and where we can recruit from. And adding a sport like this gives us a larger reach.
Oh, yes.
We can pull some kids from Florida, from Massachusetts, from just the different corners of the country to come here and play. And so really that's what we're focused on is continuing to grow our enrollment, grow our competitiveness, and being able to have that reach into different markets that maybe we wouldn't have had otherwise.
Now, are there structured practices for esports?
Yes, absolutely there are, yeah. We actually, shortly before we started this interview today, there was some one-on-one practices going on. We have full team practices during our activity break or block that we have from 4 to 6 here on campus. They have full team practices. They'll do those all throughout the week. They'll have some individual times that they'll sit down and go over some things. They'll watch film. They scout the other opponents that they're going to be playing.
So what do they look for when they watch film and scout other opponents?
Just like as I said before, just like all the other sports, tendencies. What do they like to do in certain circumstances? What are their strengths? What are our strengths? How do we exploit their weaknesses?
And without giving away again the trade secrets here, what are the strengths of Illinois College Spartan esports?
Well, really, it all stems with the individual athletes. So they have a different character that they like to use within the game, and within the game, there's aspects where the other team can block the use of certain heroes in the game, or champions, I think is what they're called. And so then you have to be versatile on what other champions you can use, and just know what the tactics are, what their strengths are. So it's very complex. I'd be lying if I told you I could give you all the details. That's what our head coach is for.
No, this has been truly enlightening. Now, are there any sort of like Deion Sanders in esports who can like play football? But I mean, everybody's in the video games now.
Sure.
So I mean, so do you have any sort of like Deion Sanders running around who plays football in the fall and then becomes Super Mario 12 in this when esports opens up?
It's funny you should say that. We do.
Really?
We have an offensive lineman on our football team who
is he the enforcer for the esports team too?
I'm not so sure if there's much muscle required on the enforcing in esports, but no, yeah, he's on the football team, competes, a very good athlete for us, and has a passion for playing League of Legends as well. And we had heard that there's been some local media outlets that are looking to talk with him because of just for that. It's such a when you think about traditional sport athletes and e-sport athletes, oftentimes you don't think that those worlds connect. And to find an athlete who does both is really quite interesting. So.
Oh no, I mean the Maryland State wrestling champ for the heavyweight class is an eSport Fanatics. I mean you've got more and more of these Deion Sanders, which would seem to give you a huge recruiting edge in terms of putting together the package to lure them here to Illinois College.
Yeah, anytime we can find an angle, you want to take advantage of that. Whether it's a traditional dual sport athlete, if it's a musician who also is an athlete, if we can connect with them in multiple ways and find a way for them to find a home here and stay connected here, that's always an advantage for us.
You have a traditional athletic director background, so has there been much of an adaptation for you to an esports environment? You're one of the leading schools. So.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's been an educational process. It was, as I said initially, I brought forward the idea, but I brought forward an idea that I didn't quite understand.
Now, what made you bring it forward? What sparked the ball for you?
I remember seeing some things, just flipping through the channels and seeing competitive gaming, and so that just stuck in the back of my head is that there's people on TV that are competing. And so one day I randomly just got on YouTube and looked up something for esports, and I found a couple TED Talks about esports, and saw some statistics about how I believe, and I'll probably butcher this, but I believe that there was more worldwide viewers of the World Championships of League of Legends than there are of the World Series and the Super Bowl.
But they're primarily concentrated in China.
Nonetheless,
yes.
they have a server over in China. They have a North American server, so there's competition in different platforms all around the world.
Well, not that far away, the University of Illinois broadcasts their football games in Manchurian and stuff. So everybody wants to appeal to the foreign students, and certainly to the Chinese market, which makes sense.
Yeah, and from what I remember seeing as well, that the more local tournaments that we've had, the larger national ones. Out in the Staples Center in Los Angeles, that's a 20,000 seat arena ish. They've sell that out when they've had these competitions.
Very quickly,
there.
they've sold those
Absolutely.
out too.
So you can tell that the excitement around this is there. It's something that just hadn't been tapped into, and so that was the reason I brought it forward. Is hey, there's some people who are interested in this. Let's look into it now. Let's be on the front edge of something. Let's be the pioneers. And create some excitement about what Illinois College can do in the world of esports. And we started to figure out the details. I've been educated a little bit more on what the game is all about. Our coach has done a campus presentation, so the folks on campus can come in and learn more about what it is they're reading when they read the recaps each day of okay, we beat this team and we beat them by this score, and this person was mining, and this person was doing some different things with. There's terminology within this sport that is not as common as you would see in other areas. So we've all been learning, and I think it's been good for everybody.
Well, it seems that you must have a very supportive and visionary president here too at Illinois College.
Yeah, she's great. She really is. She, I believe, is starting her 6th year here on campus, and from the time she stepped on campus, really had a vision for how we're going to grow and position Illinois College on a national, worldwide scale for everything we do here. And she came into the athletics department. This is right before I was hired, and made a lot of significant changes and investments into our operation. And she told me once that she truly understands the impact that athletics can have on a campus, and she wanted me to partner with her to help realize the growth here with the athletics program. And she sees this and understands that the world of esports is another one of those opportunities for us to grow and be visual on a national and worldwide stage.
One thing that really impressed me about esports is that it helps more and more of your students get a grip on bitcoins and cryptocurrencies and the whole new world that's developing about blockchain technology. I mean, do you notice a definite, other than the offensive lineman, do you notice a definite type student who just has a grip on computers and computer science?
It really kind of varies. So one of the things that we were looking at when we were starting this program was we were thinking about, well, who are these students coming in? Where are they coming from? What majors are they going to want?
Mm-hmm.
That's important. And we wanted to make sure that we had the academics.
Has there been a predominant major?
And there really hasn't. So we thought that, is there going to be people who want to be computer science or graphic design? And certainly there are. But, our biggest majors here with biology and education, we see the same sort of investment with this team in those majors as well. And we took a step back and said, this is just another sport. We shouldn't be overthinking this. We don't pigeonhole our baseball or basketball or soccer teams saying that they should be this sort of major. Everyone comes from different backgrounds, has different interests, and as does our esports program, and they have a variety of majors.
And, they must have suffer from sort of the same injuries or ailments that regular athletes and the regular traditional sports do, but unique ones too. Do you have them on sleep research and nutrition programs too, like you do your football players and others?
So we don't go into sleep research. Our coach is very aware, though, of the time that they spend in here, and they make sure to get them out and about and involved in the community, making sure that they have time for some physical exercise and making sure that they're maintaining their health. That's very important. It's all about balance, and that's something he preaches to the team quite a bit.
And how do they do with the nutrition?
Well, you lead them to the healthy options. You just hope that they continue with that, right? But as a college student, I can speak for myself that I didn't always reach for the carrot or the fruit when I should have. So, yeah.
When I've interviewed other athletic directors, like when I interviewed Ed Scott at Morgan or Harry Stinson at Lincoln, I just have these vivid memories of them comforting the parents.
Sure.
Of, they were dropping off their athletes, and one in particular with Mr. Stinson. A father was concerned because his baby boy was going to be playing college football. Of course, his baby boy was about 6'5", 320 pounds. But is there sort of like the same? Your son or daughter is now in good hands now playing esports at Illinois College.
Absolutely, that's one of the things that we were very upfront about. Is that when you come here to compete, you're going to come into a structured atmosphere where there's balance in your life and the things that you do. It's not being hidden in your dorm. It's not going to be unhealthy choices. This is a time where you're going to come here and you're going to grow as a student here at Illinois College. You're going to have proper supervision. You're going to have direction from our coach. So there's that structure in place that I think provides some comfort to the parents. Now, certainly, your son or daughter leaves home, goes off to school. You're always going to be a concerned parent. That's never going to go away. But we have the proper structure in place here to make sure our students are successful.
So, your average college football player or basketball player, they've been receiving coaching for at least 10 years. How long have esports student athletes been receiving coaching before they get to college?
Well, it varies. It certainly varies by whenever they decide to get involved. It's not your traditional. There's not that traditional youth sports setup that you would see.
Are there travel
soccer's.
teams or select leagues for esports?
Not yet. Some high schools are starting to develop those. There are some amateur teams out there, but it's not as commonplace as the traditional sports yet. Like I said, we're on the very infancy of this whole world, and we're still trying to figure out what this looks like. I wouldn't be surprised if in the next few years you continue to see the growth and you see those youth leagues develop.
And so what's the rules and regulations around esports?
Well, that's the interesting thing, is that it's not like the NCAA.
Okay.
The NCAA has a rule book that's about that thick. The world of esports doesn't. And so it's really up to the individual institution on how they want to govern and how they want to operate with their team. So what we've done is we've taken a lot of the rules that are in place as far as academic eligibility and those sort of things, and we've applied those to the esports team because we thought that was an important way of making sure that they were getting their classwork done and being eligible to compete. What's different, though, is that in the world of Division III athletics with no athletic scholarships, well, in esports we do offer scholarships. So that's a different thing there. There's different restrictions when it comes to recruiting and the NCAA and what you can and can't do different times of the year. In this world, there's none of that. So you can do virtually whatever you think is appropriate. Now, basically what that means is that coach and I need to be on the same page with what we expect and the proper way of conducting ourselves and making sure that we're operating in a professional way. But there's really not that governing body out there that has those sort of rules. There is an organization, NACE, National Association of Collegiate Esports, I believe is what it is. Mm-hmm. They are growing into that model as people start talking about it. I always liken them to the NCAA of esports, but they're not regulated to the way that the NCAA is when it comes to their competitions.
So I always find it easy to sort of understand things by framing them sort of in the traditional setting that sort of like sports or basketball. So do you have to sort of like tell some of the sport players, hey, you're playing too much, you're getting into diminishing returns. You're going to be far more effective if you take some time off, let your body recover, your mind refresh.
Yeah, I think there's always that fine balance, right? There's that you want to be able to put in the right amount of work. You need to stay focused on what you're doing, but also understand that life's about balance. And when you come to the school here at Illinois College, your academics always come first, and so you have to take care of that piece before anything else. After that, yeah, it's make sure you come to practice, make sure you get your individual skill work in. But yeah, you can't overdo it. You overdo it, and then you're going to go the opposite direction.
So what is game day like at an esport event?
So game day is they'll come in as a team and they'll get their pregame work in and they'll talk with each other about strategy.
What is pregame for esports?
Sure, it's talking a little bit about what champions are going to be using, refreshing about who they're going to be going against, the game plan in which they had in place and what they're going to try to accomplish and how they're going to move forward and attack the other opponent. And so it's just kind of a coming together and making sure your mind is right, making sure you're prepped and ready to go for the competition later on.
I mean, are the esport players, are they appreciative of everything you do for them here with the coaching, the nutrition, and everything else? Do they see their game improving?
Oh, absolutely. We've got what's interesting about this sport is that there's actual rankings in place where you can measure the success of how well they're playing, and so as they are competing, you can see that now they're no longer a low-level diamond player. Now they're a high-level diamond, or maybe they're a challenger or master level. And so there's those opportunities that you can actually see how your work that you're putting in is paying off by your increased ranking level.
And so what do you see this future being for esports based on your experience here now at Illinois College?
So I really look at esports evolving into almost a completely separate athletics department. And I say this because when you think about the structure of an athletics department, you have the athletics director, you have the multiple sports that they all compete differently. So in the world of esports is a general title, right? It's like saying college athletics. But there are games as,
I'm still trying to figure out if it's a little E or the big S behind it. There's so many different spellings on the internet.
It really is, yeah. It just depends on how you look at it or which one you find.
Well, like so many other things, I took the Wikipedia page spelling.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but yeah, really the way I see it is that there's League of Legends, there's Overwatch, there's Hearthstone, there's a variety of other games. So if you equate that to soccer, to football, to baseball, to basketball, all the such, you could really make the parallel comparisons where I could see a department set up where there is a director of esports, and then there are 7 or 8 or 10 different head coaches, and then they all have their teams. So very similar.
You see that much potential for esports?
I absolutely do. I think that there's enough people engaged in the different titles. There's enough interest in it, and it feels to me different than when you'd see a growth in a sport such as say lacrosse or another sport that was popping up recently. But because I just think that there's just so much investment, not just in our country but worldwide, that there's an opportunity for us to grow across multiple titles. And we, as I said before, we are competing in just League of Legends right now with the idea of expanding into other titles very shortly. But there's other schools right now that are doing the same thing, and I just think that across the board lends itself for a massive growth.
So what are the psychological aspects of esports? I mean, what are the mind games? What are the trash talking between the players?
Sure. So there's certainly some aspects to that. And just like if you're playing golf, if you're playing tennis, there's a mental state to this game that if you get wrapped up too much into it, you could be taken out of the game, and nobody, and you don't want that to happen. So there is that aspect of having proper communication with your team, being respectful of the opponents, and doing your best to not to get taken out of your game.
Do they get yellow flagged much in esports?
No, there's nothing like that that we've been a part of. There's our coach makes sure that we have our code of conduct and code of ethics that he talks with the team about to make sure that they are held to a certain standard. Because not only are they competing as themselves in this game, they're representing Illinois College, and it's important for them to be ambassadors of the college when they're competing.
And so do you see the support among the student body growing more and more here at Illinois College?
I do, and we saw when we opened this room here. There was we did an opening night, and this room was packed shoulder to shoulder. People wanted to see what this was all about, and there's growing interest. There's people who just want to be around the program. You find out that there's other people on campus who have been playing. There's faculty members who play. There are people all over that you just, until we formalized it and put it out, you just didn't know how many people were connected to this world.
It's funny you mentioned that. I had a professor in law school who used to play Game Boy in his office, so there are some talents out there. When you hired that coach, was it a different hiring process than, say, hiring a new football coach or a new basketball coach? Did you look for different things? When I interviewed Heather Lyke, the athletic director at University of Pittsburgh, she said she looked for passion when she hired a coach. I mean, do you look for the same thing in the passion in an esports coach, that's the same passion as a football coach?
Yeah, I think that for me, I was looking for the technical side. I think that when the world that we're in right now with hiring coaches for esports, it's important to make sure you have somebody who really understands the technical side and can develop your athletes.
And what about recruiting? I mean, did they need to be strong in recruiting?
Recruiting's always important. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think for us, having a high-level player himself who's connected to this world at a very high area, that lended itself to being able to go out and talk to folks and network with folks to be able to get some of those names for our recruiting efforts.
So with sort of the more relaxed regulations, I mean, I think that the players would probably be the best recruiters when you think about it. From their performances being posted on YouTube, I imagine some of them probably have their own websites and their own networks already.
Yeah, we're starting to really expand our reach as our competitions get out there, and we're broadcasting those. We're talking about developing, having our commentators here for the matches, so that way people can log on, watch our competitions, and really understand what's going on and hear what Illinois College is all about.
So when these D1 Power 5 athletic directors call you, I mean, I just read this week University of Florida is adding esports, and you speak about Maryland, Penn State. The big boys are going to realize it sooner rather than later. I mean, what are you thinking of when you realize, my best coaches, my best administrators, my best players is what they're after? I mean, when I asked Derek Carter that question, the athletic director at Coppin State, he said it makes him proud to know that, he has prepared someone go enough that they can continue to advance their career. How does it make you feel when these D1 guys come on and say, what is all this esports all about?
Well, in our world, you're spot on. It's if I'm doing my job correctly, then my coaches are going to move on and do something great somewhere else.
I mean, there's no such thing as Midwest nice when it comes to college sports. I mean, that's for sure.
Oh, well, sure. I mean, there's no doubt you want to keep your talent.
Yes.
There's no doubt about it. But at the end of the day, my job is to make sure our coaches are improving on a daily basis. And as their talents improve, they're going to get noticed. Now, do I want to keep our coach here for multiple years? Absolutely. I want to see Illinois College be a national power in a lot of sports. But as you said, the things are growing, things are changing. There might be a day where our coaches get a phone call, our esports coach gets a phone call from one of those other schools. I'd like to think that he'll stay and continue pushing us forward and doing some great things here. But if he doesn't, then I have to take solace that I did everything I could, and we've prepared him for his next stage in his career.
Now, how did you get into college sports administration?
Sure. So I actually took a non-traditional route. So I did not play nor coach in college. I got my undergrad at Bowling Green State University, and while going to school there, I started to work in the athletics department as a student. Really enjoyed the internal operations and the background, the facilities, and that sort of piece. Did an internship at University of Michigan, and then took a position at Southeast Missouri State University for 4 years working in arena management down there. And so I started to kind of just work my way through, and I found a position at Oberlin College up near Cleveland. I was there for 6 years as the director of athletic facilities, and then moved into the assistant and associate AD role, and really developed my background in internal operations. And back in the summer of 2014, I was fortunate enough to get the position here.
Now, how has your leadership style evolved as you've gone through so many unique colleges and different positions?
It's one thing I've realized is communication. Communication needs to evolve and be different for everybody in every circumstance. And I think that's the biggest piece, is truly understanding that everybody is different and everybody needs to hear a message differently.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to know your people well to know how to deliver that message.
Let's stay on this topic of communication for a second, since it's so important to athletics, and particularly being a successful athletic director. Do you see the esports players having the same comfort in communicating with their coaches and the administration that the football players and basketball players did? I mean, let's face it, if they're playing in college, they were probably very good players in high school, so they're used to being treated well by the coaches and the administrators. But the esports players, since there's probably not a team in their high school, they're probably not used to dealing with you guys. So do you see them, comfortably communicating with you as their athletic director, since they didn't have that same experience in high school as a football or basketball player?
Yeah, I think with any new athlete that comes to campus, they have to start finding their comfort zones, and they need to feel comfortable with their surroundings and the people that are around them. And so whether it's esports or any other sport, there's oftentimes just a handful of incoming students, freshmen, that will connect right away.
Mm-hmm.
That oftentimes it'll just take a few years. But I've got a good relationship with a young man on the team here who's now in his second year on the team and works for our IT department, and see him around the halls and over in our athletic building quite a bit. And I expect to have more of those as we continue through the years.
And do you see more and more students coming to you and saying to you, Mr. Snyder, you do such a great job. I love the experience here at Illinois College. How do I go about becoming athletic director?
That's one of the best parts of the job. We have a sport management degree here, or a major here, and I have student athletes that will stop me in the hallways. In fact, our football esports athlete,
You're Deion Sanders.
my Deion Sanders, he stopped me the other day.
We're showing how old we are.
I know, right? How many people actually know what Deion is?
He is on one of those survival reality shows.
Is he?
Yeah.
Yeah, with Bear Grylls or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. I was talking with that athlete, and he stopped me. I came in here just to see how practice was going, and he said, "Hey, I'd like to get some time to talk with you about."
An e-sport
that.
athlete asked you how to become an athletic director?
Yeah, he was the e-sport /
That's
football.
fantastic.
Yeah. So at first I said, "Are you crazy? Do you want to be an athletics director?"
Have any pure esports athletes asked you about yet how to become an athletic director?
Not yet. I anticipate that conversation coming at some point, just because I see their game and their sport just like every other sport, and I think that the more that the society starts to embrace that, I think that there'll be more folks who are interested in being athletic director.
Now, do you have more and more female student athletes coming to you and asking you about how to become an athletic director? I mean, if you look, women are moving up into ranks. Dr. Carla Williams just became the athletic director at UVA, first time ADC for an African American female. Are more and more asking you here about how to become an athletic director?
I haven't had very many women come through and ask about an athletics director position. I've had a couple in my time here, but not too many.
So over your time, what do you think the impact of Title IX has been on college athletics?
I think it's had a very positive impact. I think that there's more to be done, though.
Esports players. Do you have any female esports players?
Well, it's funny. I go back to how we recruit, and as you're recruiting and you see somebody that says their name is Real Gamer 9, you don't know if Real Gamer 9 is a man or a woman.
Yes.
And so inherently, I think it's hard to specifically go out and recruit women, but we are operating as a co-ed program. And so we absolutely would love to have more women involved in our program. And at the start of last year, we had, I think, 2 women that were initially interested in joining the team, ultimately decided it just wasn't the thing that they wanted to pursue. So there's opportunities out there. We just need to find a way to be able to identify them earlier on in the process.
And so is esports Title IX friendly?
I think it is. When you look at Title IX, it's about the gender, and it's opportunities for male and female. It's what are they looking for in their opportunities, and what can you provide, and we are offering an opportunity where women can come here and compete in an esports team.
And do they ever look at, the highest earners on YouTube, who are esports guys earning like $30 or $40 million a year? Do they realize that opportunities out there for them?
I haven't had those direct conversations, but I think they do. I mean, just as our other athletes look at the NBA or NFL or Major League Baseball and would love to be able to play on the highest stage one day, I think it only makes sense that they pay attention to that.
There's probably like a huge difference when you think about it. I was at an NCAA meeting where they were talking about a study they did that showed that 76% of D1 basketball players, 50% of D2, and 24% of D3 thought they were going to make it to the show and play in the NBA when less than 1% had. But then when you think about it, probably esport athletes have the greatest opportunity to play professionally.
Well, yeah, I'm not quite sure of all the different platforms, but I know there's a multitude. There's different ways. There's different teams out there. We had some other folks who were engaged with our program as we were starting to develop the program, who had been professional athletes in different titles, and they live down in St. Louis, and there's some folks that I know that are up in Chicago that we talked with in regards to when we were developing our program that are on a professional team as well. I think there's opportunities for these teams to grow organically and to compete together and to grow their skills, and then just the opportunity to then get entered into these sort of tournaments to then succeed. It's just a different world.
So speaking of it as a different world, so do you ever think there's going to be sort of like the recruiting story for the esports where the coach saw this 7-foot kid walking across campus and said, "Hey, are you going to play basketball?" I mean, do you think a coach will just be surfing the net one night and see this incredible thing and say, "Hey, you should be playing esports for me at Illinois College"?
Quite frankly, I think that's how a lot of it does work, right? It's you're online. This is your recruiting world. This is a friend who knows somebody, or you're watching them compete, and it's hey, have you ever considered coming to college and competing on the collegiate level? So yeah, I think that absolutely happens.
So is there special equipment for esports? I mean, is there special shoes, special back pads, braces, or anything like that?
Well, our special equipment comes in the form of the computers and the chairs. I mean, that's the basis of it all. You've got your high-end monitors and your high-performing computers, and the chairs are essential because you're going to be sitting there gaming for multiple hours, and you got to make sure you're comfortable to be able to perform at your highest level. Outside of that, the teams absolutely are outfitted just like every other traditional sport with a team jersey with some warm-ups. They get some T-shirts and the other swag alike.
And so how are the other student athletes accepting them? The overall campus community is, but what about the football players, basketball players? Are they accepting them as fellow student athletes, especially since you have the one Deion Sanders sort of floating between both worlds?
Well, I think Deion helps us, right?
Yes.
I think anytime you can have a crossover athlete that does both of these sports is a good start, and then they bring some of their friends into the fold. We've got some track athletes that have played and have been involved as well, and I think that sort of connection really helps.
What events do the track athletes do?
What running events and
yes.
things? They were sprinters, yeah.
And so when the other ADs will call you, what generally questions do they ask? I mean, you're obviously well-versed and obviously very compassionate and supportive of your sports teams here. Anybody can see that. What do the other ADs, are there the typical questions when they call, what they're going to be asking?
Yeah, usually it's the what did it cost for you to start up?
The eternal question that every AD asks for everything.
It's all about that, yeah, exactly. So it's what did it cost to start up? What's your coaching model? How did you find your coach? What's a recruiting class look like for this sort of team?
But it must be great for a coach. You don't have to go through the headhunters. So you save a nice chunk of change right there.
Sure, you can go direct to it, yeah.
And you don't have to worry about him bringing along his entourage with him, the 8-man staffs that you got to boot 8 years later, like has happened to some of the SEC schools.
Yeah, it's definitely a different world. Different world.
Do you see them, sort of gripping it and realizing, that this is a future for a huge part of college sports?
I think it's becoming that way. I think that there's that understanding that this is something that's growing. This is something that is going to continue to get larger and larger, and people want to be a part of it.
When you look at the future projections for college and generally sporting industry, generally it's grossly inflated. Revenues from fantasy sports in 2020 were supposed to be around $18 billion. They're going to be around $5 billion. Lord knows there's a lot of football stadiums and basketball stadiums where the ADs did the classic borrowed long-term on short-term predictions and are suffering. But how do you see the future for esports? Do you just continue to see this bullish two-figure growth?
I think there will still be some growth before we see any leveling off. I think we are early enough in the process where there's still opportunities and capacity for programs to continue to grow. I think a lot of that is due to the clientele that we're bringing in. This is a group of people who have not yet had the opportunity to compete on a college team until recently, and so.
So, like I said, let's look at a traditional sports. What inning do you see esports in right now?
I would say the second or third inning.
Really?
I think in a college level, second or third. Now, if you look at the professional ranks, it's probably a little more advanced than that.
Yes.
But I think right now we're still very early on in the process.
And so, do you have any former esport athletes come in to give the motivational speeches to the players like coaches would do for other sports?
We haven't gotten to that realm yet, mostly because our program is still so young, and we're just operating in our second year of competing. Where our coaches certainly has some connections in the world out there with in regards to other collegiate coaches and other professional athletes, but no, our program is still quite young. That we're still motivating ourselves.
So, what sort of growth have you seen in the 2 years?
Well, as far as our rosters are continuing to grow, I think we're going to be next fall well over 20 athletes.
Can you just feel an overall buzz on campus about the team too?
I think that the more that we compete, the more we put our brand out there, the more people are more familiar with what we're doing, the more excitement you see around it.
Well, everything certainly says that you read and hear about esports. Thank you for your time, Mr.
Thanks, Jonathan. I appreciate it.
This is Jonathan Yates with Culture Sports. May the esports be with you. Thank you for joining us.